The first-class cabin fell silent as the camera phones lifted. 18 passengers froze mid-sip of champagne, fingers hovering over armrests, eyes locked on the man in the
This
gray
doesn't look
hoodie
right.
It's my
occupying seat
ID.
1A.
I need to verify this.
The
It's
overhead
valid.
lights
Step
caught
to
the
the back.
worn fabric,
Good to
the
see you
frayed
again.
cuffs,
How's the
the
flight been
scuffed
so far?
white
Great, thanks.
Nikes
Everything's
poking
been
out
smooth.
from beneath faded Levi's. A canvas backpack lay crumpled at his feet, the kind sold at Target for $25. He didn't look up. His hands rested flat on the tray table, steady as stone, while Captain Thomas Hargrove loomed in the aisle with shoulders squared and jaw set like a man who'd never been questioned in 32 years of flying. The timestamp on Rebecca Davis's phone read 7:42 p.m. She held it low, angling the lens to capture both men. The attorney in her recognized theater when she saw it. The black man in the hoodie versus the white captain in the crisp uniform. David versus Goliath. Except David wasn't slinging stones. He was just sitting there, breathing evenly, waiting. Hargrove's voice carried the weight of authority earned through decades of controlling metal tubes hurtling through the sky at 600 miles per hour. Sir, for the last time, you need to move to economy. This seat is reserved. The man in 1A didn't flinch. His voice emerged low and controlled, each syllable deliberate. My ticket says 1A. I'm not moving. Preston Montgomery swayed in the aisle, Rolex Submariner glinting under the cabin lights, Tom Ford's suit rumpled from 2 gin and tonics in the airport lounge. His face flushed red as he stabbed a finger toward the seated passenger. Just drag him out already! This is my seat! Emily Lawson gripped the edge of the galley counter, knuckles white. 4 months on the job, and she'd never seen anything like this. Training had covered medical emergencies, turbulence, even hijacking scenarios. Nobody mentioned what to do when the captain and a drunk senator's son ganged up on a quiet man in a hoodie. Hargrove turned to her, and his eyes held no room for debate. Call security. Have him removed. The man in 1A didn't move, didn't speak, just held Hargrove's gaze with eyes that measured and calculated and stored everything for later use. 50 passengers watched. Phones recorded. The moment stretched like taffy until someone in row 3 whispered, "This is messed up." The screen went black. White text appeared. 12 million views, but nobody knew the truth. Another line faded in below. 3 hours earlier. The office door had no nameplate. Marcus Bennett preferred it that way. The corner suite on the 43rd floor of Liberty Airways headquarters overlooked downtown Chicago, Lake Michigan spreading gray and endless beyond the towers of glass and steel. Most CEOs would have plastered their name in gold letters, hung portraits, installed mahogany furniture heavy enough to crush a man. Marcus kept a simple desk purchased from IKEA 7 years ago, 3 monitors running real-time flight data, and a single-framed photograph of a Boeing 737 with registration number N447LA. The first plane. The one he'd bought with an $8 million loan that every banker said would bankrupt him within 18 months. That was 2002. 28 years of 18-hour days, 28 years of bleeding for every percentage point of market share. The airline industry didn't make billionaires, it made corpses. But Marcus Bennett had climbed over the wreckage of United's bankruptcy and Delta's merger and Southwest's stranglehold on regional routes to build Liberty Airways into the 4th largest carrier in America. His phone buzzed. James Walker, VP of Operations. Marcus tapped the speaker. We need to talk about Hargrove. Marcus leaned back in the chair, springs creaking. What situation? Complaint number 19. Another passenger claims racial profiling. Filed yesterday. Same pattern we've seen for 7 years. Black passenger, valid first-class ticket. Hargrove questions the booking, creates a scene. The skyline blurred as Marcus rubbed his eyes. 19 complaints. 19 times Human Resources had investigated and found insufficient evidence. 19 times the pilots' union had circled the wagons, citing Hargrove's spotless safety record and 32 years of service. 19 times passengers had experienced what Marcus knew in his bones was discrimination. And 19 times the system had protected the man with the uniform instead of the person in the seat. I'm flying to New York tonight. Put me on Hargrove's flight. Static crackled through the speaker. Marcus, you don't have to do this yourself. We can have an investigator ride along, document everything, build a case. Investigators get observed behavior. I need to see real behavior, the kind that happens when nobody thinks the CEO is watching. This could backfire. If word gets out, book me seat 1A. Don't tell anyone. Not HR, not legal, not the board. Just you and Sarah know. You're playing with fire. Marcus ended the call and turned to the window. Somewhere out there, Captain Thomas Hargrove was preparing for flight LB447, running through pre-flight checks, reviewing weather patterns, doing everything by the book. The perfect professional. The model pilot. And, if the complaints were accurate, also a man who looked at skin color and clothing and decided who belonged in first class. The photograph on the desk caught his eye. N447LA gleaming on the tarmac. Fresh paint, brand new engines. He'd been 34 years old. Broke. Terrified. Certain he'd lose everything. But he'd learned aircraft maintenance from the ground up. Worked the night shift at O'Hare for 8 years, fixing landing gear and hydraulic systems while studying computer science online. The software he'd built to optimize maintenance schedules had attracted attention from regional carriers. The first contract brought in $600,000. Enough for a down payment. Enough to take the leap. 28 years later, Liberty Airways operated 142 aircraft, employed 15,000 people, and generated $4.7 billion in annual revenue. Marcus owned 71%. The market valued his stake at $3.3 billion. Forbes estimated his total net worth at $4.7 billion, ranking him number 247 on their list of American billionaires. And tonight, he was going to dress like he made $18 an hour and see if his own employees would treat him like a human being. The apartment occupied 800 square feet in South Loop, a neighborhood where young professionals overpaid for proximity to downtown and ignored the fact that Chicago winters turned the lakefront into a wind tunnel that could strip flesh from bone. Marcus had bought the building in 2015 as an investment property, 24 units. He lived in the smallest one, on the 3rd floor, overlooking an alley where garbage trucks rumbled past at 5 a.m. The closet held 3 suits from Men's Warehouse, never worn. Board meetings happened over video conference. Investor presentations used PowerPoint and earnings reports, not fashion statements. The shelf above the hanging rod stored what Marcus actually wore: 5 hoodies in various states of decay, a dozen t-shirts advertising bands he'd never seen in concert, jeans from Costco sold in 3-packs. He pulled the gray Northwestern hoodie over his head. The fabric had softened from 100 wash cycles. The university logo faded to ghosts of purple and white. Levi's 501s, broken in perfectly, paired with white Nike Air Force Ones that he'd bought on sale 2 years ago and worn into comfortable submission. The canvas backpack came from an Army surplus store, purchased for authenticity rather than function. Inside went a change of clothes, a laptop, phone charger, and a Wall Street journal he'd never read but thought added a nice touch. The mirror reflected a 52-year-old black man who looked like he'd spent his life working construction or driving trucks or fixing air conditioners. The gray in his close-cropped hair had arrived early, stress and genetics conspiring to turn him silver by 45. Lines creased his forehead, parentheses bracketed his mouth. He carried 205 pounds on a 5'9" frame, most of it accumulated during years of sitting behind monitors instead of working the hangars.
Nobody would look at this man and think billionaire. Nobody would see CEO. That was the point. His phone buzzed. Sarah Williams, CFO, and one of 3 people who knew what Marcus was doing tonight.
Last chance to back out.
Marcus typed his response. See you tomorrow.
You're insane.
Probably. He locked the apartment and took the stairs down to street level. Mrs. Rodriguez stood in the lobby sorting mail, her gray bun perfectly pinned despite the fact that it was almost 7 in the evening.
Marcus, you traveling again? You work too hard, mijo.
He smiled. Gotta pay the bills, Mrs. Rodriguez. She tisked and waved him off.
Bills. You're too skinny. Come by this weekend. I'll make arroz con pollo.
I'd like that. The irony settled like lead in his stomach. Mrs. Rodriguez had lived in Unit 2C for 40 years, survived 3 different landlords, and had no idea the current owner lived 2 floors above her. She knew Marcus as the quiet man who fixed the furnace that one time when management didn't respond fast enough. The guy who helped her carry groceries up the stairs when her hip acted up. Not the billionaire who owned the building and could have evicted her with a phone call. He preferred it that way. The Uber arrived in 4 minutes. Toyota Camry, 2019 model. Driver named Jerome with a 4.8 star rating. Marcus climbed into the back seat and confirmed the destination. O'Hare International Airport, Terminal 3. Jerome glanced in the rearview mirror. Flying out tonight? New York. Business or pleasure? Marcus considered the question. What do you call deliberately subjecting yourself to discrimination to expose systemic racism in your own company? Business, mostly. Which airline? Liberty. Jerome's expression soured. Man, I heard they treat people bad. My cousin got kicked off a flight last month. Said they claimed his ticket was fake, but he bought it straight from their website. Had the confirmation email and everything. Made him miss his grandmother's funeral. The information landed like a punch. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened a notes app. What's your cousin's name? Why you asking? I work in aviation. Might be able to help. Jerome rattled off a name and flight number from memory. Marcus typed it in, already planning to have Sarah pull the incident report first thing tomorrow. 19 complaints about Hargrove. How many other incidents were buried in the system, written off as misunderstandings or computer glitches, or passengers who didn't follow proper procedures? Your cousin filed a complaint? Yeah, but they sent back some form letter. We take all concerns seriously, blah, blah, blah. Nothing changed. He's banned now. They put him on a no-fly list for causing a disturbance, even though the gate agent was the one who caused the problem. Traffic thickened as they merged onto I-90. Red taillights stretched to the horizon, Chicago commuters grinding their way home through the eternal construction zones that plagued the Kennedy Expressway. Marcus watched the city slide past, glass towers giving way to industrial warehouses and freight yards, and the kind of neighborhoods where people worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on. He'd grown up in Englewood, back when that meant something different than it meant today. His father had driven a bus for CTA. His mother cleaned offices downtown. They'd saved enough to buy a narrow house on Morgan Street, 3 bedrooms for 5 people, cracks in the foundation that let winter air whistle through the floorboards. His father died when Marcus was 14. Heart attack at a red light. Bus full of evening commuters who had to wait 90 minutes for a replacement driver while paramedics worked on a man who was already gone. The life insurance paid $17,000. His mother worked 2 jobs after that. Marcus helped by taking a position at a Quick Trip, pumping gas after school until his hands bled from the cold. He'd loved airplanes.
Used to ride his bike to the end of the runway at Midway and watch the planes take off. Metal birds defying gravity through pure force of will and engineering. College wasn't in the cards. The money wasn't there. So he'd lied about his age and gotten hired as a mechanic's assistant at O'Hare, sweeping hangars and fetching tools for $18 an hour. The mechanics taught him everything: how to read hydraulic schematics, how to torque a bolt to exact specifications, how to spot a stress fracture before it became catastrophic failure. He'd spent 8 years on the night shift, working on planes while studying computer science through online courses that cost $49 per credit hour. The software had started as a personal project. Aircraft maintenance ran on paper schedules that didn't account for real-world conditions. Planes flew through thunderstorms and sandstorms and humidity that corroded seals faster than the manufacturer's estimates predicted.
Marcus built an algorithm that tracked actual wear patterns and adjusted maintenance schedules dynamically. He'd pitched it to his supervisor, who'd laughed and said software couldn't replace experience. 2 months later, that supervisor was explaining to investigators why a landing gear had collapsed on touchdown. The maintenance schedule said the strut had another 200 flight hours. Marcus's algorithm had flagged it as critical 8 days earlier. The regional carriers started calling. $600,000 for the first contract, $2 million for the second. By the time he was 34, Marcus had enough capital to approach banks about buying a used 737. They'd all said no, except one loan officer at Fifth Third Bank who'd grown up in Englewood and remembered what it meant to bet on someone with no collateral except hunger. Jerome pulled up to the departure curb at Terminal 3. "Good luck with your flight, man. Hope Liberty treats you better than they treated my cousin." Marcus handed him a $20 for a $12 fare. "Keep the change. And Jerome, your cousin deserves better. I'll look into it." "Appreciate that, brother." The automatic doors whooshed open, and Marcus stepped into the controlled chaos of a major airport at evening rush. Families dragged suitcases. Business travelers rushed toward gates with phones pressed to their ears. TSA agents barked instructions about removing shoes and laptops. The Liberty Airways ticketing area occupied the south end of the terminal, blue and silver branding declaring "Fly with Heart" above a bank of self-service kiosks. Marcus approached a kiosk and scanned his confirmation code. The screen flickered and displayed his boarding pass. Seat 1A, first class, flight LB447 to JFK, departing 7:15 p.m. He tapped print, and the machine spat out a paper pass with a barcode and his name. Bennett, Marcus. The ticket agent desk stood 20 feet away. Lisa something, according to her name tag. Early 30s, blonde hair pulled into a regulation bun. Liberty Airways uniform pressed sharp enough to cut diamonds. She smiled at the businessman in the Armani suit ahead of Marcus, handed over priority tags for his luggage, wished him an excellent flight. Marcus stepped forward with his printed pass. Lisa's smile dimmed. "Sir, economy boarding is at gate F." "I'm in first class, gate D7. Her eyes traveled from his hoodie to his backpack to his scuffed sneakers. "Let me see your ticket." He handed over the pass. She scanned it twice, frowned at her monitor, scanned it again. "This shows 1A. "That's my seat." "There must be some mistake. Let me check with my supervisor." "No mistake. I booked it yesterday." Lisa's jaw tightened. She tapped keys, scanned the pass a fourth time, finally looked up with the expression of someone who decided to let corporate deal with this mess. Gate D7. Have a good flight. No apology. No acknowledgement that she'd assumed a man in a hoodie couldn't possibly belong in first class. Just the bare minimum courtesy required to avoid a formal complaint. Marcus walked away, tucking the pass into his backpack. One interaction, one data point. How many passengers dealt with this every single day? How many swallowed the indignity because they needed to get somewhere, and fighting would mean missing the flight? Gate D7 sat at the end of a long concourse lined with Hudson News kiosks and overpriced restaurants selling deep dish pizza to tourists who didn't know better. Marcus stopped at a newsstand and grabbed a Wall Street Journal, $4 for a newspaper he could have read online for free. The headlines screamed about Treasury yields and Federal Reserve policy. Page 3 carried a small article about Liberty Airways stock hitting an all-time high, $89 per share, up 12% year-to-date. Analysts bullish on the company's expansion into Caribbean routes. Marcus paid with a $5 bill and pocketed the change. If everything went according to plan tonight, that stock price would crater by morning. The board would panic, investors would demand answers, and Marcus would give them exactly what they deserved: the truth. He found a seat near the gate and opened the newspaper without reading it. Across the aisle, a black family wrestled with carry-on luggage while a gate agent lectured them about bag size restrictions. The mother argued quietly, showing a boarding pass that clearly indicated first class. The agent measured the bag with a metal frame, declared it half an inch too large, demanded a $50 fee. The white businessman who'd checked in ahead of Marcus rolled up with a bag twice the size. The same agent waved him through with a smile. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened a note, documented the interaction, time-stamped it, filed it mentally under systemic problems that need immediate attention. The family paid the fee with a credit card, the mother's shoulders slumping in defeat. They'd remember this. They'd tell friends. They'd think twice before booking Liberty Airways again. How many customers had the airline lost this way? How much revenue bled away because gate agents and ticket counters and flight crews made snap judgments based on skin color? Boarding started at 6:55 p.m. First class, rows 1 through 4. Welcome aboard. Marcus joined the line with his paper pass ready. The gate agent scanned it without looking up. Michael something, according to his name tag. 40s, receding hairline. The kind of middle management face that blurred into corporate anonymity. Preston Montgomery cut the line. Rolex Submariner gleamed on his wrist. $42,000 of Swiss engineering that probably kept time exactly as well as a $30 Casio. Gucci loafers, Tom Ford suit. The uniform of inherited wealth worn with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. His phone conversation echoed through the gate area, volume cranked for maximum audience impact. "Dad, the merger's done. We're gonna make millions." "Yeah, I know. Tell them the SEC can kiss my ass. Our lawyers will bury them." Michael's expression shifted into something servile. "Welcome back, Mr. Montgomery. 1A as usual?" Preston didn't break stride. "You know it. And make sure the champagne's cold this time. Last flight, it was practically warm." "Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir." Marcus reached the scanner. Michael glanced at him, at the hoodie, at the backpack. "Sir, what's your boarding group?" "First class. 1A. Confusion flickered across Michael's face. "There must be a mistake. Mr. Montgomery has 1A. Marcus held up his pass. "My reservation. Confirmed yesterday." Michael checked his computer screen, clicked through multiple windows, frowned like he'd discovered a glitch in the Matrix. It shows 2 passengers for 1A. System error. You'll need to take another seat. I paid $1,200 for this seat. Check your manifest. Sir, please step aside. You're holding up the line. A woman behind Marcus muttered something about entitled people who didn't understand how airlines worked. A man in a suit tapped his watch with theatrical impatience. Marcus stayed planted, phone already recording audio in his pocket. Check the manifest. My name is Marcus Bennett, seat 1A, platinum status. Michael's jaw worked like he was chewing nails. Sir, I don't have time for this. Either take another seat or I'll have security remove you from the gate. Call your supervisor. I don't need a supervisor. I need you to move. Rebecca Davis appeared at Marcus's elbow. Late 30s, sharp suit, lawyer eyes that missed nothing. She held her phone low and steady, recording everything. Check his ticket, she said quietly. Verify the booking. It takes 30 seconds. Michael's face flushed red. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. I'm a passenger on this flight. Watching you refuse to verify a valid booking absolutely concerns me. Michael grabbed a phone mounted to the desk and stabbed numbers. Muttered conversation, glares at Marcus, more muttering. He hung up and waved Marcus through with a gesture that suggested he'd rather be doing literally anything else. Gate agent says board, but don't be surprised if the captain asks you to move. Marcus took his boarding pass and walked down the jet bridge. Behind him, Rebecca Davis whispered into her phone, something about documenting everything and having her paralegal on standby. The aircraft smelled like recycled air and industrial carpet cleaner. Flight attendants clustered near the galley, running through pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. Emily Lawson glanced up as Marcus entered first class, eyes widening slightly at the disconnect between his appearance and the seat number on his pass. Preston Montgomery occupied 1A like a king on a throne. Shoes off, feet propped on the bulkhead, champagne flute in hand despite the fact that the plane hadn't even finished boarding. He looked up as Marcus approached, bloodshot eyes tracking from the hoodie to the backpack to the scuffed Nikes. Buddy, move along. This is my seat. Marcus checked his boarding pass. This says 1A. You're in my seat. Preston laughed, the sound wet and loose with alcohol. I don't care what your paper says. I sit here every week. I'm Preston Montgomery, senator's son. Now get lost before I have you thrown off this plane. Emily stepped forward, smile tight enough to crack porcelain. Sir, can I help you find your seat? Marcus showed her the boarding pass. This is my seat. 1A. Emily looked at Preston, at Marcus, at the boarding pass. Her training said verify everything. Her eyes said she'd already decided who belonged in first class, and it wasn't the man in the hoodie. I'm sorry, this seat is occupied. Let me check with the captain. She disappeared into the cockpit. Marcus stayed standing, backpack slung over one shoulder, while Preston smirked and sipped champagne that probably cost more per bottle than most people spent on groceries in a month. Other passengers filed past, claiming seats, stowing luggage. William Foster settled into 1B, businessman type with a laptop bag and the expression of someone who wanted zero involvement in whatever drama was unfolding. Rebecca Davis took 2A, phone still recording. An elderly couple claimed 2C and 2D, whispering to each other about entitled people and the decline of civil society. Captain Thomas Hargrove emerged from the cockpit, 6'2", silver hair perfectly combed,
uniform immaculate down to the creases in his pants.
32 years of command etched into every movement, every gesture. He walked like a man who'd never questioned his right to authority, who'd spent 3 decades having passengers defer and comply and obey without hesitation. His eyes swept over Marcus. Hoodie, backpack, skin color. The assessment took maybe 2 seconds. The conclusion was instant. "Sir, what's the problem?" Marcus kept his voice level. "No problem, Captain. I have seat 1A. This passenger is in my seat." Hargrove looked at Preston, then back at Marcus. The calculation was visible. Man in expensive suit with a Rolex versus man in a hoodie with a canvas backpack. The math wasn't complicated. "Mr. Montgomery is a regular passenger. Are you sure you have first class?" "Positive. Would you like to see my ticket?" Hargrove waved dismissively. "That won't be necessary. Emily, move this gentleman to economy. We need to maintain our departure schedule." Marcus didn't budge. "Captain, I paid for this seat. I'm not moving." "Sir, I'm the captain of this aircraft. What I say goes. You will comply with crew instructions or you will be removed from this flight." "Your aircraft?" Marcus let a slight smile play at the corners of his mouth. Interesting choice of words. Hargrove's expression hardened. "Don't be smart. You have 5 seconds to move or I'm calling security." Preston stood up, swaying slightly. The champagne had done its work, lowering inhibitions and raising volume. "You heard him! Get to the back where you belong!" The cabin went silent. 18 passengers watched. Rebecca's phone captured everything. William Foster stared at his laptop screen like it held the secrets of the universe. The elderly couple clutched each other's hands. Marcus addressed Hargrove directly, ignoring Preston entirely. "Captain, you're making a decision based on appearance, not facts. That's discrimination. I'm making a decision based on policy. First class is for valued customers, and I'm not valued because?" The question hung in recycled air. Hargrove's jaw clenched. He'd walked into the trap and knew it, but retreat wasn't an option. Not with passengers watching, not with his authority on the line. "Because Mr. Montgomery has Platinum Elite status." "Check my record. I also have Platinum status." Hargrove didn't check. "This conversation is over. Move to economy, or I will have you forcibly removed." Marcus lowered himself into seat 1A. Preston's face went crimson. "Get out of my seat!" Marcus spoke quietly, each word measured. "Captain, Federal aviation regulations state a passenger with a valid ticket cannot be removed without cause. What's your cause?" "Disrupting the flight?" "I'm sitting in my assigned seat." "Who's disrupting?" Preston shouted loud enough for economy class to hear. "I am not sitting next to him! Get him off this plane!" Hargrove turned to Emily. "Find another first-class seat for this passenger." Emily consulted her tablet. "Captain, first class is fully booked." Hargrove's fingers drummed against his leg. The departure time was 7:15. It was now 7:08. Every minute of delay cost money, created cascading problems with connecting flights, generated passenger complaints that ended up in his personnel file. "Then he goes to economy. Final decision." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder app. The red dot blinked. "I'd like your name and employee number, Captain." Hargrove's smile held no warmth. "Thomas Hargrove, employee 4729. Feel free to file a complaint. Won't change anything. Now move, or I'm closing this door and calling airport police to drag you off."
Marcus glanced around the cabin. Every face watched. Every phone pointed his direction. History being made in real time, except nobody understood what they were witnessing yet. "I'm not moving, Captain. This is my seat. If you want me removed, you'll need to provide legal cause."
Preston lunged forward, hand reaching for Marcus's shoulder. "I'll move you myself, you—" William Foster stood up.
"Hey, that's assault!" Rebecca Davis raised her phone higher. "I'm recording everything. Keep going, Mr. Montgomery. Give me all the evidence I need." Preston froze, hand suspended in midair, brain catching up to mouth. Emily grabbed his wrist and guided him back, murmuring about federal regulations and serious consequences. Hargrove stepped into the aisle, blocking Marcus's view of the cockpit. "Final warning. Move, or I'm declaring you a security threat and having you arrested." "On what grounds?" "Failure to comply with crew instructions." "Show me where the FAA regulations say I have to give up my assigned seat because of racial profiling." The words dropped like grenades. Hargrove's face went white, then red, then settled into a shade of purple that suggested his blood pressure had just achieved orbit. "How dare you?" "I dare because it's true.
You looked at me and decided I don't belong in first class.
You didn't check the manifest. You didn't verify my booking. You made a snap judgment based on how I'm dressed and the color of my skin. That's a serious accusation. It's an accurate observation." Hargrove pulled a phone from his belt and dialed. "Operations, this is Captain Hargrove, Flight 447. I need airport police at gate D7. Unruly passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions. Yes, immediately." He ended the call and stared at Marcus. "You've got about 3 minutes before you're in handcuffs. Last chance to save yourself the embarrassment." Marcus didn't move, didn't speak, just pulled out a second phone from his pocket, the one he actually used for business, and dialed a number on speaker. The phone rang twice. A woman's voice answered. "Sarah Williams?" "Sarah, it's Marcus. I'm on Flight 447. Captain Hargrove is calling airport police to have me removed from my seat. I need you to do exactly what I say." Sarah's voice came through crystal clear, loud enough for Hargrove to hear. "Marcus, where are you?" "Still on the ground. Still in seat 1A. Sarah, pull Hargrove's personnel file. Every complaint, every incident report, everything. Then pull today's security footage, cabin cameras, gate cameras, all of it." "On it. What else?" "Call the lawyers. I want a federal discrimination suit prepared within the hour. Named defendants, Thomas Hargrove, Preston Montgomery, and Liberty Airways." Hargrove's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "Who the hell are you talking to?" Sarah's voice continued. "We're suing ourselves?" "We're holding ourselves accountable. And Sarah, activate Protocol 9. Silence on the line. 3 seconds. 5. 10. "Marcus, that's the nuclear option." "I know. Execute it." "You're sure?" "Completely. I'll call you after we're airborne. If we're airborne." He ended the call and looked up at Hargrove. The captain stood frozen, wheels turning behind his eyes, trying to piece together what he'd just heard. "Who was that?" Hargrove's voice had lost its certainty. "My chief financial officer. She's about to make your night very interesting." "Your CFO? What are you talking about?" Marcus smiled. "You'll find out. But Captain, you might want to call your operations center.
Ask them to check who Marcus Bennett is. Hargrove's hand twitched toward his phone, but pride held him back. I don't take orders from passengers. Not an order. Free advice. Make the call before this gets worse. Worse? You're the one about to be arrested. Am I? The certainty in Marcus's voice penetrated. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. He pulled the phone and dialed operations. This is Hargrove. I need you to pull up passenger Marcus Bennett's profile. Pause. Yes, I'll hold. 15 seconds crawled past. Hargrove's expression went from annoyed to confused to horrified in slow motion. The phone nearly slipped from his hand. You're sure? Yes. I understand. I'll handle it. He disconnected and stared at Marcus like seeing him for the first time. The color drained from his face, professional composure cracking like thin ice under weight. Mr. Bennett, I didn't realize. Marcus held up a hand. Stop. Don't apologize because you know who I am now. That's the whole problem, Captain. If I were white or wearing a suit, would we be having this conversation? Hargrove opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came. Preston looked between them, champagne forgotten. What's going on? Who is he? Marcus stood. Every eye in first class locked on him. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a leather wallet, flipped it open to reveal an ID card. Gold lettering embossed on black plastic. Marcus Bennett, founder and CEO, Liberty Airways. Employee number 00001. The silence that followed could have smothered stars. Preston's champagne flute slipped from his fingers and shattered against the floor. Emily gasped. William Foster's laptop slid off his tray table. The elderly couple gripped each other tighter. Rebecca Davis's phone stayed steady, capturing the moment when assumptions collided with reality at cruising altitude. Marcus spoke quietly, voice carrying to every seat. My name is Marcus Bennett. 28 years ago, I was an aircraft mechanic at O'Hare, making $18 an hour. I built Liberty Airways from one used Boeing 737 into a fleet of 142 aircraft. I own 71% of this company. I own this plane. And for the past hour, I've been told I don't belong in seat 1A. The cabin held its collective breath. 18 passengers suspended in the moment between knowing and understanding, between what they'd assumed and what had just detonated in their faces like a flashbang grenade. Preston Montgomery remained frozen halfway out of his seat, mouth working silently, champagne soaking into the carpet at his feet. Captain Hargrove gripped the seat back of 1B hard enough to leave fingerprints in the leather. Emily Lawson pressed against the galley wall, tablet clutched to her chest like a shield that might protect her from the consequences, bearing down like a freight train. Marcus tucked the ID back into his wallet and returned it to his hoodie pocket. The motion casual, unhurried, carrying the weight of a man who'd spent 28 years building empires while others assumed he couldn't afford the entrance fee. Preston found his voice first. Panic cracked through the alcohol haze, reality sobering him faster than coffee and cold water combined. Mr. Bennett, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. If I'd realized who you were, then you would have treated me differently. That's exactly the problem, Mr. Montgomery. Respect shouldn't require a net worth statement. Rebecca Davis lowered her phone, lips curving into something between a smile and a predator's grin. For the record, I'm an attorney. Everything that happened here is documented.
Time-stamped. Ready for discovery. William Foster finally looked up from his laptop, face pale. I stayed silent. I watched the whole thing and didn't say anything. I'm sorry. Silence is a choice, Mr. Foster. Remember that next time. Hargrove remained locked in place, 3 decades of command authority evaporating like morning dew under a blowtorch. His mouth opened twice before words emerged. Mr. Bennett, I apologize. I made a terrible mistake. If you'll allow me to— Stop! Marcus held up one hand, and the captain's jaw snapped shut. Don't apologize because you know who I am now. That makes it worse.
Every black passenger you've questioned, every ticket you've double-checked, every seat you've reassigned because someone didn't look the part, they deserved the same respect you're scrambling to give me now. The overhead speakers crackled. Co-pilot's voice, female, uncertain. Captain Hargrove, ground control is asking about our status. We're 12 minutes past departure window. Hargrove grabbed his phone, hands shaking enough to make the screen blur. Tell ground we're handling a situation. Stand by. Preston tried again, desperation bleeding through every syllable. Mr. Bennett, please. My father's a senator. If this gets out, it'll destroy his career, destroy mine. I'll do anything. Anything you want. Your father's career isn't my concern. Neither is yours. You put your hands on me, Mr. Montgomery. You attempted assault in front of federal witnesses. The fact that your father sits in the Senate doesn't grant you immunity from consequences. Emily pushed off the galley wall, voice small. Sir, I helped. I assumed you were in the wrong seat. I should have verified the manifest first. I'm so sorry. Marcus studied her. 24 years old, 4 months into a career that probably represented her first real job out of college. Scared, ashamed, but honest enough to own her role instead of hiding behind the captain's authority. How long have you worked for Liberty, Emily? 4 months. Did anyone train you to question passengers' tickets based on appearance? No, sir, but I saw the captain was concerned and I assumed he knew what he was doing. Following orders isn't an excuse, but acknowledgement is a start. You're not fired. You're going to help me fix this. Emily's eyes widened. I don't understand. You will. Sit down. She sank into a jump seat, legs barely supporting her weight. Marcus turned back to Hargrove, who'd gone gray under the cabin lights. Captain, call operations. Tell them to patch you through to the executive emergency line. Use code Alpha 7. Mr. Bennett, I can explain. I don't want explanations. Make the call. Hargrove retreated into the cockpit. Through the open door, passengers heard his muffled voice, sharp with tension, speaking in short bursts. The co-pilot appeared in the doorway, young woman with captain's stripes earned through hours and skill rather than decades of seniority. Andrea Martinez, according to her name tag. She looked at Marcus, at the shattered champagne glass, at Preston still frozen in place. Mr. Bennett, I'm First Officer Martinez. Captain Hargrove informed me of the situation. How would you like me to proceed? Get us in the air, Captain Martinez. I'll handle the rest. Her eyebrows rose. You're promoting me? Captain Hargrove will be stepping down, effective immediately. You'll take command of this flight. Martinez's professionalism locked into place despite the bombshell. Yes, sir. I'll begin pre-flight checks. She disappeared back into the cockpit. 30 seconds later, the door opened and Hargrove emerged looking like a man who'd aged a decade in the span of a phone call. He stopped in front of Marcus, shoulders slumped, uniform suddenly hanging loose. Sarah Williams informed me I'm suspended pending investigation. She's requested I surrender my wings and deplane. That's correct. I have 32 years with this airline. I've never had a safety incident. My record is spotless. Your safety record is spotless. Your human decency record has 19 formal complaints and God knows how many incidents that never got reported. You're done, Captain. Now walk off this aircraft before I have you escorted. Hargrove's jaw clenched. Pride warred with survival instinct. Survival won. He reached up and unpinned his captain's wings, the 4 gold stripes that marked 3 decades of command, and held them out. His hand trembled. Marcus didn't take them.
Give them to Emily. She'll forward them to HR. The former captain handed the wings to the flight attendant, turned without another word, and walked down the jet bridge. Passengers watched him go. Nobody spoke. The weight of what they'd witnessed pressed down like cabin pressure during descent, ears popping, equilibrium shifting. Preston remained standing, swaying slightly. Are you kicking me off too? Marcus considered the question. Senator's son, drunk, entitled, violent. The easy answer was yes. Ban him permanently. Press assault charges, let the justice system grind him into paste. But Preston Montgomery represented something bigger than one privileged idiot. He represented a system that protected wealth and status, that allowed mediocre white men to fail upward while others fought for scraps. You have a ticket. Economy class. You'll sit there quietly. If you say one word, if you cause one problem, you'll be met by federal marshals at JFK. Understand? Economy? But I paid for first. You forfeited first class when you assaulted me. Be grateful I'm letting you stay on the plane. Emily moved to escort Preston toward the back of the aircraft. He shuffled after her, Tom Ford's suit wrinkled, Rolex catching overhead lights one last time before disappearing behind the curtain that separated privilege from reality. Marcus lowered himself into seat 1A. The leather felt the same as it had 5 minutes ago, but the entire world had shifted on its axis. Rebecca Davis leaned forward from 2A. Mr. Bennett, I practice civil rights law. If you need representation for the federal suit, I'd be honored to help. I have lawyers, but thank you, Miss Davis. Your recording will be valuable. Already uploaded to secure cloud storage, 3 backups. They can't make this disappear. William Foster cleared his throat. Sir, I work in corporate governance. I stayed silent because I'm a coward, and I'm ashamed. If there's anything I can do to make this right, vote with your dollars, Mr. Foster. Fly airlines that treat people with dignity. And next time you see injustice, don't wait for permission to speak up. The elderly couple in 2C and 2D hadn't said a word since Marcus's revelation. The husband finally broke their silence, voice cracking with emotion. We voted for Senator Montgomery 3 times. We believed in him. Not anymore. His wife nodded. What you did took courage. Thank you for showing us what we've been ignoring. Captain Martinez's voice came through the speakers, professional and calm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Martinez. We apologize for the delay. We'll be pushing back from the gate shortly. Flight time to JFK is approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. We're committed to getting you there safely and treating every passenger with respect. That starts now. The engine spooled up. Ground crew disconnected the jet bridge. Flight attendants went through safety demonstrations that nobody watched, mind still processing what had unfolded. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened encrypted messaging. Sarah Williams responded within seconds. "You actually did it." Had to see it myself. Worse than the complaint suggested. Stock's already moving, down 4% in after-hours trading. Someone leaked video. Let it fall. Truth costs money. Lies cost more. Board wants an emergency meeting. Tell them I'll call in after landing. And Sarah, start the audit. Every employee complaint for the past 10 years. Every incident involving racial profiling. I want names, dates, outcomes. No stone unturned. This will take months. Cost millions. Do it anyway. He pocketed the phone and closed his eyes. The aircraft taxied toward the runway, Chicago lights sliding past the windows, the city where he'd grown up poor and hungry and determined to build something that mattered. Liberty Airways had been his dream, constructed through 80-hour weeks and leveraged debt and sheer force of will. He'd sacrificed relationships, health, peace of mind, all for a company that would treat people fairly, that would value effort over pedigree. And tonight he discovered that somewhere along the way, while he focused on expansion and profit margins and shareholder value, the culture had rotted from within. Good people like Emily had learned to trust authority figures like Hargrove, who'd spent decades making snap judgments based on skin color and clothing. How many passengers had walked away humiliated? How many had sworn off Liberty Airways forever? How much damage had been done in the name of efficiency and order? The plane stopped at the runway threshold. Engines roared to full power. The force pressed Marcus back into his seat as they accelerated down the tarmac, concrete blurring beneath them, nose lifting, wheels leaving the ground. Chicago dropped away, lights becoming stars, the city shrinking to a glowing map of streets and buildings and lives lived far below. Marcus had flown this route 100 times, usually in the cockpit, discussing navigation and weather patterns with pilots who treated him like visiting royalty. Tonight, he'd experienced what regular passengers endured, and the gap between expectation and reality yawned wider than Lake Michigan beneath the wings. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Mr. Bennett, this is Rebecca Davis. I sent the video to my paralegal. She's uploading it to our firm's secure server and flagging it as evidence for potential litigation. Whatever happens next, the truth is preserved." Another text, this one from William Foster. "I donated $1,000 to the ACLU in your name. It's not much, but it's a start toward making amends for my cowardice." The elderly wife from 2C sent a message. "My husband and I want you to know we're ashamed we supported Senator Montgomery. We're calling his office tomorrow to express our disgust at his son's behavior. Thank you for opening our eyes." Marcus didn't respond to any of them. Words felt insufficient. The damage had been done, the video existed, and mourning would bring consequences that would ripple through the company like seismic waves. Stock analysts would downgrade Liberty's rating, customers would demand refunds, competitors would smell blood and circle like sharks. Let them come. He'd built this company once from nothing. He could rebuild it on a foundation of integrity instead of convenient ignorance. Emily approached with the beverage cart, movements hesitant. "Mr. Bennett, can I get you something to drink?" "Water, please." She poured from a bottle into a plastic cup and handed it over. Their fingers touched briefly. Hers shook. "I meant what I said earlier. You're going to help fix this." "How? I'm just a flight attendant." "You're the person who sees passengers every day. You know what works and what doesn't. When we redesign training programs, I want your input. Real scenarios from someone who's been in the trenches.
Why are you giving me this chance? I helped Hargrove try to remove you. Because you admitted it. Because you recognized the mistake instead of defending it. Growth requires honesty, Emily. You showed me you're capable of both. She wiped her eyes quickly and nodded. I won't let you down, sir. See that you don't. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Marcus unbuckled and pulled out his laptop, connecting to the aircraft's Wi-Fi. Liberty Airways provided complimentary internet in first class, one of the small touches he'd insisted on during the last round of upgrades. He logged into the company's internal network using credentials that granted access to every database, every file, every communication. Sarah had already pulled Hargrove's personnel folder. The file stretched back 32 years, performance reviews glowing with praise for punctuality and safety consciousness. Flight hours logged with meticulous precision. Commendations from passengers who appreciated his steady hand during turbulence. Then came the complaints section. 19 formal complaints filed over 7 years. Marcus opened each one and read them chronologically, a pattern emerging that made his stomach churn. Complaint number 1, African-American male passenger, first class, questioned 3 times about ticket validity despite confirmed reservation. Filed complaint after Hargrove demanded to see a credit card as proof of purchase. HR investigated, found no evidence of racial bias, counseled Hargrove on customer service. Complaint number 4, Black female passenger, premium economy, asked to move to accommodate a valued customer. White male passenger given her seat without explanation. Woman filed complaint, received form letter apology, and voucher for future travel. Complaint number 7, African American couple, first class. Hargrove announced over intercom that their seats were under review for upgrade eligibility, forcing them to prove their booking in front of other passengers. HR noted miscommunication, no disciplinary action. Complaint number 12, Black male passenger, businessman in suit. Hargrove refused to allow him in first class until gate agent re-verified ticket 3 times. Passenger missed meeting due to delay. HR found no evidence of intentional discrimination. 19 complaints. 19 instances where passengers felt degraded, questioned, diminished. And every single time, the system had protected Hargrove. Union contract required concrete evidence for disciplinary action. Witness testimony wasn't enough. Passenger complaints were dismissed as misunderstandings. The pattern was invisible when viewed one incident at a time, but stacked together, it formed a mountain of bias that HR had chosen to ignore. Marcus opened a new document and began typing. Subject: Immediate policy changes, effective immediately. First bullet point: all passenger complaints involving allegations of discrimination will be investigated by third-party auditors, not internal HR. Second, employees with 3 or more substantiated complaints will be placed on mandatory leave pending retraining. 5 complaints equals termination, union contract notwithstanding. Third, security footage from all flights will be retained for 90 days instead of 7, allowing time for passengers to file complaints after the fact. Fourth, anonymous reporting system for employees who witness discrimination but fear retaliation. Fifth, quarterly audits of complaint patterns broken down by employee, route, and demographic data. His phone rang. Sarah Williams, voice tight. Marcus, we have a situation. The video went viral. How viral? Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. Rebecca Davis uploaded a 30-second clip. It's been shared 200,000 times in the past hour. Hashtag Liberty Air Discrimination is trending nationwide. Stock? Down 9%. After-hours trading volume is 10 times normal. Analysts are calling for statements. Board members are panicking. I've got 6 voicemails from our PR director begging for guidance.
Marcus watched the numbers scroll across his screen. Liberty Airways trading at $81.02, down $7.98 from the closing bell. Market cap had lost approximately $900 million in 90 minutes. Let it burn, Sarah. No statements tonight. Tomorrow morning we release everything. Full transparency. Security footage from the gate, from the cabin, Hargrove's complaint history, our policy failures. All of it. Silence stretched across the connection. Marcus, that's commercial suicide.
Admitting fault opens us up to massive liability. Hiding the truth guarantees we deserve whatever happens next. We built this airline on trust. Tonight proved we violated that trust. Time to own it. The board will fight you. I control 71%. They can fight all they want. Another call interrupted. James Walker, VP of Operations, sounding like he'd aged 20 years since this afternoon. Marcus, Hargrove's union rep is threatening a wrongful termination suit. They're claiming you retaliated against him for enforcing safety protocols. He violated civil rights laws on camera, James. Let them sue. Discovery will expose every complaint we buried. They'll withdraw before it gets that far. What about Preston Montgomery? His father's office called. Senator wants to discuss the situation privately. No private discussions. No backroom deals. Preston committed assault in front of federal witnesses. If the senator wants to help his son, he can encourage him to plead guilty and accept responsibility. Marcus, he's threatening to launch congressional investigations into our business practices. Then we'll have nothing to hide, because we're about to investigate ourselves. Tell the senator I said thank you for the motivation. He ended the call and returned to the laptop. Email from the PR director, Amanda Foster, subject line in all caps. Urgent, need statement ASAP. He opened it and read 3 paragraphs of panic about brand damage and customer defection and the need for immediate crisis management. Marcus hit reply and typed 4 sentences. No statement tonight. Tomorrow morning we release full documentation of what happened, including our policy failures. Prepare materials for press conference at 10 a.m. We're going to own this, not spin it. Send. His phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Bennett, I'm a reporter with the Chicago Tribune. Can we speak about tonight's incident on Liberty Flight 447? Delete. Another text. Mr. Bennett, CNN would like to interview you about the viral video showing discrimination on your airline. Delete. 16 more texts arrived in rapid succession. CBS, NBC, Fox News, MSNBC, local affiliates, aviation industry publications. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Everyone wanted him to explain how a billionaire CEO could be racially profiled by his own employees. He powered off the phone. Rebecca Davis appeared beside his seat, voiced low. The media's going insane. They've identified you from the video. It's everywhere. I know. Senator Montgomery released a statement. He's calling the video out of context and suggesting his son was provoked. Of course he did. There's also discussion on Twitter about boycotting Liberty Airways. People are angry that this could happen. They should be angry. I'm angry. This is unacceptable, and it's been happening for years while I focused on profits instead of people. What's your next move? Marcus closed the laptop and looked out the window. Darkness below, stars above, the aircraft suspended between earth and sky in a liminal space where normal rules bent and broke. Somewhere beneath them, America spread out in grids of light and shadow. Millions of lives intersecting and diverging, some people flying through the darkness and others watching from the ground. Tomorrow I'm going to hold a press conference. I'm going to release every piece of evidence we have. I'm going to announce a complete overhaul of our training, our complaint system, our culture. And I'm going to make it clear that privilege ends where human dignity begins. That's going to cost you billions. Money comes back, integrity doesn't. Rebecca smiled. That's a quote worth remembering. Feel free to use it in your practice. She returned to her seat. Marcus reclined slightly and closed his eyes, but sleep remained elusive. His mind churned through scenarios, consequences, possibilities. The stock would crater further once the full story broke. Shareholders would scream. The board would demand his resignation. Competitors would poach customers with promises of better service. Let them try. He'd survived the 2008 financial crisis when banks stopped lending and bankruptcy seemed inevitable. He'd survived 9/11 when the entire industry collapsed and experts predicted airlines would never recover. He'd survived oil price shocks and labor disputes and a pandemic that grounded 90% of global air traffic. This was different. This was personal. This was about the values he'd claimed to champion while building an empire that allowed men like Hargrove to abuse authority unchecked. The captain's announcement interrupted his thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into New York. Local time is 9:47 p.m. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for landing. 2 hours had passed in what felt like minutes. Marcus buckled his seatbelt and watched through the window as the New York skyline emerged from darkness, Manhattan glittering like a pile of diamonds dumped on black velvet. The Hudson River snaked past, reflecting city lights. LaGuardia sat off to the left, but they were heading to JFK on the southern edge of Queens. The wheels touched down with barely a bump. Captain Martinez's skill evident in the smooth landing. The aircraft slowed, reversed thrust roaring briefly before settling into a taxi toward the gate. Marcus powered on his phone and watched it explode with notifications. 273 texts, 94 missed calls, 618 emails. He ignored all of it and opened encrypted messaging to Sarah. Landed safely. Press conference tomorrow at 10 a.m., Liberty headquarters. Invite every major outlet. Tell them we have documentation to share. Stock closed after hours at $78.50, down 12%. Expected. How's the team handling it? PR is in full panic mode. Legal is drafting liability assessments. Operations is trying to figure out how many pilots we can terminate before the union revolts. Everyone's terrified. Good. Fear means they're paying attention. See you tomorrow morning. The jet bridge connected with a gentle thump. Passengers began gathering belongings, filing toward the exit with glances at Marcus that ranged from admiration to pity to confusion. He remained seated, waiting for the crowd to clear. Emily approached, tablet in hand. Mr. Bennett, Captain Martinez wanted me to thank you for the opportunity. She said she won't let you down. Tell her I'm counting on it. And Emily, thank you for being honest tonight. Thank you for giving me a second chance. She moved toward the galley to help with deplaning procedures. Marcus stood, grabbed his backpack, and joined the flow of passengers. Preston Montgomery lurked near the economy cabin exit, eyes downcast, expensive suit wrinkled and stained. He looked up as Marcus passed. Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I was drunk and stupid and wrong. Marcus stopped. Every instinct screamed to keep walking, to let this privileged idiot drown in the consequences of his actions. But something in Preston's expression gave him pause. Not the usual entitled indignation, not the defensive anger of someone caught. Genuine fear, mixed with something that might have been understanding.
Mr. Montgomery, you put your hands on me. You demanded I be removed because you assumed I didn't belong. That's assault and discrimination. If you were anyone else, you'd be in handcuffs right now. I know. I deserve to be arrested. I deserve everything that's coming. Do you understand why it was wrong? Not just illegal, wrong. Preston nodded slowly. You were right earlier. I would have treated you differently if I'd known who you were.
But that's the problem. Everyone deserves respect, not just billionaires. I've spent my whole life thinking my father's name made me special. It doesn't. It just made me blind. Marcus studied him for a long moment, searching for manipulation, for the practiced contrition of someone who'd learned to talk his way out of trouble. He found something different, raw honesty, born from having your worldview demolished in public. You're banned from Liberty Airways for 5 years. After that, you can reapply. But Preston, use those 5 years to become someone worth knowing. Your father's name won't last forever. Character does. He walked off the aircraft without waiting for a response. The jet bridge stretched ahead, fluorescent lights harsh after the dimmed cabin. JFK Terminal 4 sprawled beyond, late-night travelers hustling toward connections and baggage claim and the taxi stands outside. Marcus merged with the crowd and disappeared into the anonymous flow of humanity. Just another man in a hoodie with a backpack, invisible among thousands. Exactly how he preferred it. Tomorrow would bring cameras and questions and consequences. Tonight belonged to the quiet satisfaction of having forced truth into light, whatever the cost. The hotel room overlooked Times Square, neon bleeding through floor-to-ceiling windows, even at midnight. Marcus stood with his forehead pressed against the glass, watching advertisements scroll across buildings designed to make people want things they didn't need. His phone had finally stopped buzzing an hour ago, battery drained to zero from the avalanche of notifications. He'd plugged it into the charger and left it face down on the nightstand, unwilling to face the digital firestorm until morning brought coffee and clearer thinking. Sleep remained a fantasy. His mind replayed the evening on an endless loop, picking apart moments, analyzing reactions, second-guessing decisions. Should he have revealed his identity immediately? Would that have prevented the escalation? Or would Hargrove have simply apologized and learned nothing, another incident swept under the corporate rug? The city never slept. Taxis honked 43 floors below, their yellow paint turned amber by sodium streetlights. Tourists stumbled between Broadway theaters and overpriced restaurants, phones raised to capture memories they'd never watch again. Marcus had built an airline to connect people across distances, to shrink America into something manageable. And tonight, he'd discovered his company treated passengers like freight to be categorized and sorted based on arbitrary metrics. His laptop sat open on the desk, screen displaying Liberty Airways stock charts. After-hours trading had closed with shares at $78.50, down $10.50 from yesterday's close. 12% of the company's value evaporated in 4 hours. Market capitalization had shed $1.1 billion while Marcus flew from Chicago to New York. $1 billion of investor wealth converted to smoke because a drunk senator's son and a bigoted pilot couldn't see past skin color. The financial press had already started circling. Bloomberg ran a piece titled, "Liberty Airways CEO Faces Discrimination on His Own Airline. Stock Plummets." CNBC's Mad Money host tweeted that Marcus should resign immediately to restore investor confidence. Fox Business blamed corporate wokeness for creating divisive incidents. The Wall Street Journal posted a measured analysis suggesting the video revealed systemic problems that could cost Liberty billions in lawsuits and lost revenue. They were all wrong. This wouldn't cost billions. It would cost everything if Marcus didn't act decisively. He grabbed the hotel phone and dialed room service. Coffee, large pot, black. Send up whatever pastries you have. The voice on the other end promised delivery within 20 minutes. Marcus returned to the laptop and opened his email. Sarah Williams had sent a detailed brief at 11:47 p.m., subject line, damage assessment and recommended actions. The document ran 18 pages. Market analysis showed Liberty's stock down across all indices, with analysts projecting further drops when trading resumed tomorrow morning. Customer service had logged 473 complaints in 6 hours, passengers demanding refunds and threatening boycotts. Social media sentiment analysis showed 87% negative mentions, with hashtags like boycott Liberty and racist airline trending across platforms. 3 board members had submitted formal requests for an emergency session. The pilots' union released a statement defending Hargrove's right to due process and condemning rush to judgment based on incomplete information. Senator Montgomery's office issued a press release claiming his son had been provoked and demanding a full investigation before ruining a young man's future over a misunderstanding. Sarah's recommendations occupied the final 3 pages. Immediate suspension of all employees mentioned in the video, pending investigation. Hire a crisis management firm to control the narrative. Issue a carefully worded statement expressing concern while avoiding admission of liability. Launch an internal review to identify policy gaps. Most importantly, do not release the full security footage or complaint history, as it would expose the company to massive legal jeopardy. Marcus deleted the email without responding. His phone vibrated despite being powered off. The screen glowed with an incoming call. He'd turned it back on without realizing, muscle memory seeking connection even while his conscious mind craved isolation. The caller ID showed James Walker, VP of Operations. "It's almost 1 a.m, James." Hargrove's lawyer called. "They're preparing a wrongful termination suit, claiming you violated union contract by suspending him without due process. He discriminated against a passenger on camera. Due process doesn't protect civil rights violations." His lawyer argues you had personal involvement, creating a conflict of interest. Says any reasonable CEO would have recused themselves and let HR handle it. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter in the empty hotel room. Any reasonable CEO wouldn't have been racially profiled by their own employee. The conflict exists because Hargrove created it. I'm just telling you what they're saying. Unions backing him. They're talking about coordinated action if we don't reinstate, pending a neutral arbitration. Let them strike. We'll hire new pilots. Silence stretched across the line. James cleared his throat twice before finding words. Marcus, we can't replace 2,000 pilots overnight. A strike would ground the entire fleet. We'd lose $100 million a week minimum. Then we lose it. I'm not backing down because union thugs want to protect a racist. This isn't about protecting Hargrove. It's about contract language. They have legitimate concerns about process. They had legitimate concerns when we received complaint number 1 7 years ago. They stayed silent. Now they're worried about process? Tell them to save their breath. He ended the call before James could respond. The laptop screen had dimmed to conserve power. Marcus tapped the trackpad and pulled up Twitter, searching for hashtag Liberty Air Discrimination. The feed scrolled endlessly, a digital river of outrage and commentary. A video clip from the cabin showed Preston grabbing Marcus's shoulder, Emily standing nearby without intervening, Hargrove looming in the aisle. The 30-second snippet had accumulated 3.2 million views. Comments ranged from supportive to vicious. This is why I never fly. Airlines treat black people like criminals. CEO staged this for publicity. No billionaire dresses like that. Captain was doing his job, Passengers should have just moved. Finally, someone with power experiencing what we deal with daily. Liberty Airways stock is tanking. Good. Racists don't deserve profit. A knock interrupted his doom scrolling. Room service arrived with a silver cart carrying a French press, cups, cream Marcus wouldn't use, and a basket of croissants and muffins. He signed the check, added a $20 tip, and carried the coffee to the window. The first sip burned his tongue. He drank anyway, craving the caffeine jolt that might sharpen his thoughts. Tomorrow's press conference would define Liberty Airways for the next decade. He could follow Sarah's advice, minimize damage, protect shareholder value, issue careful statements crafted by lawyers to avoid liability while expressing vague concern, suspend Hargrove pending investigation, let the process drag on for months, eventually settle quietly and move forward. Or he could burn it all down and build something better from the ashes. His father's voice echoed across 28 years. Marcus, you can't fix broken systems by asking permission. You break them open and let light in. The old man had died believing his son would amount to nothing. Dropped out of high school to work full-time, came home smelling like jet fuel and hydraulic fluid, talked about airplanes like other kids talked about sports. His mother had been more supportive, quietly proud when Marcus showed her the first paycheck from the software contract. She'd lived long enough to see him buy that initial Boeing 737, stood on the tarmac at O'Hare with tears streaming while he explained how he'd mortgaged everything for this chance. She'd died 8 years ago. Heart failure. Same condition that killed his father. Genetics carrying forward the stress of poverty and overwork. Marcus had been in Dubai negotiating a maintenance contract when the hospital called. By the time he landed in Chicago, she was gone. He'd built Liberty Airways partly to honor her memory, to prove that a kid from Englewood could create something lasting, to show that hard work and intelligence mattered more than pedigree or connections. And tonight, he discovered that somewhere in the pursuit of growth and market share, the airline had become exactly the kind of organization that would have rejected his younger self. The coffee tasted like ashes. He poured another cup anyway. His phone rang again. Sarah Williams, calling from Chicago despite the late hour. Tell me you're not planning to do something reckless. Define reckless. Marcus, I've known you for 15 years. I can hear it in your voice. You're going to ignore my recommendations and go nuclear, aren't you? Your recommendations protect the company at the expense of truth. I didn't build Liberty on lies. You built Liberty on survival, on making hard choices that kept us solvent when other airlines went bankrupt. This is another survival moment. We play defense, minimize exposure, live to fight another day. Marcus watched taxis negotiate Times Square traffic, yellow metal insects swarming through concrete canyons. What happens to the next passenger? The one who gets profiled next week, next month, next year? Do we tell them, sorry, we protected our stock price instead of fixing the problem? We fix it quietly. Internal reforms, better training, stricter oversight. But we don't hand ammunition to every plaintiff's attorney in America by admitting systemic discrimination. The ammunition already exists, Sarah. 19 complaints against one pilot. How many other Hargroves are flying Liberty planes right now? How many gate agents make assumptions based on skin color? How many times have we chosen profit over principle? Her sigh carried the weight of someone watching a friend walk into traffic. You're going to release everything tomorrow. The complaints, the footage, the audit results. Every piece of documentation we have. Full transparency. The stock will crater. We'll face class action lawsuits. Customers will defect. We might not survive this. Then we don't deserve to survive. Airlines are replaceable. Integrity isn't.
That's easy to say when you own 71%. What about the employees who depend on their jobs? The shareholders who invested their retirement savings? You're gambling with other people's livelihoods. Marcus drained his coffee and refilled the cup. I'm gambling that people value honesty over corporate cover-ups, that customers will respect an airline that owns its failures instead of hiding them. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we go bankrupt and I lose everything. But I'll lose it standing for something that matters. You're impossible. That's why you took the CFO job. She laughed despite herself. What do you need from me? Financial projections assuming worst-case scenario. Stock drops 30%. Customer defection rate hits 25%. Class actions cost us $500 million in settlements. Can we survive? Give me 2 hours. And Marcus, get some sleep. You look like hell on the security footage. I'll sleep when this is over. He ended the call and opened a new document. Press conference talking points. No prepared speech, no corporate speak, just bullet points to keep him focused. The words flowed faster than expected, anger transmuting into clarity. Point 1. What happened on Flight 447 was unacceptable and represented systemic failure. Point 2. I take personal responsibility for creating a culture that allowed bias to flourish. Point 3. We're releasing all documentation related to Hargrove's complaints and our policy failures. Point 4. Effective immediately, new protocols for handling discrimination complaints with third-party oversight. Point 5. Any employee with substantiated bias complaints will be terminated, regardless of seniority or union protection. Point 6. Establishment of a $50 million fund to compensate passengers who experienced discrimination. Point 7. Complete audit of all personnel files, with results published quarterly. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. Rebecca Davis, the attorney from Seat 2A. Mr. Bennett, I'm compiling evidence for potential class action. Would you be willing to provide testimony about systemic discrimination at Liberty Airways? He typed a response. I'll do better. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I'm holding a press conference where I'll release everything. You'll have all the documentation you need. 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing. That's extraordinary. Most CEOs would circle the wagons. You're handing us the ammunition. Justice requires honesty, Ms. Davis, even when it's expensive. I look forward to tomorrow. For what it's worth, what you're doing takes courage. Marcus pocketed the phone and returned to the window. Courage felt like the wrong word. Courage implied choice, bravery in the face of alternatives. This felt more like inevitability, gravity pulling him toward the only path that made sense. He could no more ignore tonight's events than he could ignore a failed engine at cruising altitude. The laptop chimed with incoming email. Sarah's financial analysis, delivered 90 minutes ahead of schedule because she was probably running on coffee and anxiety like Marcus. He opened the spreadsheet and watched numbers cascade across columns. Worst-case scenario painted a grim picture. Stock price dropping to $55 represented a 30% decline from yesterday's close, erasing $2.3 billion in market capitalization. Customer survey suggested 25% defection rate was conservative, potentially 35% if the news cycle turned particularly toxic. Class action settlements could reach $800 million if every substantiated complaint resulted in maximum damages. Revenue projections showed Liberty losing $1.4 billion over the next fiscal year. Operating costs remained fixed, while income plummeted. The airline would burn through cash reserves within 18 months, requiring either additional financing or drastic cuts to survive. Sarah had included a note at the bottom of the analysis. These numbers assume you do everything wrong from a PR perspective. Release damaging documents.
Admit liability. Refuse to settle quietly. They also assume the board doesn't revolt and force you out. Marcus, this path leads to bankruptcy court. Please reconsider. He closed the spreadsheet without responding. Bankruptcy was a tool, not a death sentence. Airlines restructured constantly, shedding debt and renegotiating contracts under court protection. United had emerged stronger after their 2002 filing. American restructured in 2011 and merged with U.S. Airways to become the world's largest carrier. Delta's bankruptcy cleared $8 billion in debt and positioned them for long-term growth. If Liberty Airways entered bankruptcy protecting profit over principle, it deserved to die. If it filed because Marcus refused to compromise on human dignity, he'd live with the consequences. His phone rang again. Unknown number, New York area code. Marcus almost declined, but something made him answer. Mr. Bennett, this is Andrea Martinez.
I'm sorry to call so late, but I wanted to thank you personally for the opportunity tonight. The co-pilot who'd taken command after Hargrove's suspension, Marcus remembered her professionalism, the smooth landing despite the chaos. You earned it, Captain Martinez. That was a difficult situation, and you handled it perfectly. I've been flying for Liberty for 12 years. 6,000 hours in the cockpit. I've been passed over for captain 3 times because they said I needed more experience. Meanwhile, pilots with half my hours got promoted because they fit the profile. White men. Exactly. Tonight you showed me that merit actually matters. I wanted you to know how much that means. And Mr. Bennett, whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the cost, you did the right thing. Some of us have been waiting a long time for someone to stand up. The call ended before Marcus could respond. He sat in silence, Andrea's words settling like stones in still water. How many qualified people had Liberty overlooked? How many talented employees had watched mediocrity get promoted ahead of them? How much potential had the airline wasted because decision-makers valued familiarity over competence? The clock showed 3:17 a.m. Sunrise was still hours away, but Marcus abandoned any pretense of sleep. He showered, shaved, pulled on the spare clothes from his backpack. The Northwestern hoodie went back on out of habit and spite. If yesterday taught him anything, it was that clothing didn't determine worth. Liberty Airways headquarters sat 43 floors below, occupying 3 levels of the building. Marcus could have held the press conference there, surrounded by corporate branding and carefully managed visuals. Instead, he'd chosen the ballroom at the New York Hilton Midtown, a neutral space large enough for the media circus he'd intentionally created. His laptop showed 53 RSVPs from news organizations: CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all 3 major networks, plus Bloomberg, CNBC, Reuters, Associated Press, and 24 regional outlets. Sarah had arranged for the ballroom's full capacity of 200 seats, expecting overflow into standing room. At 6 a.m., Marcus ordered breakfast from room service and forced himself to eat scrambled eggs that tasted like cardboard. The coffee helped, bitter and strong enough to strip paint. He reviewed his talking points one final time, then deleted them. This wasn't a performance requiring rehearsal. This was confession, and confession demanded spontaneity. His phone vibrated with texts from board members demanding emergency meetings before the press conference. Delete, delete, delete. James Walker sent another message about union negotiations. Delete. The PR director begged him to reconsider releasing damaging documents. Delete. Only one message received a response. Emily Lawson, the flight attendant, sent a simple note. Mr. Bennett, thank you for believing in second chances. I won't waste mine. Marcus typed back,
See you at headquarters Monday morning. We have work to do. At 8 a.m., he left the hotel and caught a taxi to the Hilton. Morning traffic choked 6th Avenue. Delivery trucks double-parked while unloading supplies, commuters flooding subway entrances like water down drains. The city operated on routines and schedules, millions of people performing synchronized choreography without thinking about it. The hotel ballroom occupied the second floor, accessed through a lobby already swarming with reporters setting up equipment. Cameras on tripods, lights on stands, cables snaking across carpet. Producers barked instructions into headsets while makeup artists touched up on-air talent. The circus had arrived early. Sarah Williams stood near the podium, tablet in hand, looking like she hadn't slept. Circles under her eyes confirmed the suspicion. She approached Marcus with the expression of someone attending a funeral.
Last chance to back out. We can cancel this, issue a written statement, buy ourselves time to think.
No backing out.
The stock's going to crater when markets open. We're looking at circuit breakers triggering if it drops too fast.
Let them trigger.
Marcus, please. I'm begging you to reconsider. We can fix this without destroying everything you've built.
He placed both hands on her shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. Sarah, what I built is already destroyed. I just didn't know it until last night. Today I'm clearing the wreckage so we can rebuild properly.
You're the stubbornest man I've ever met.
That's why Liberty survived when everyone predicted we'd fail.
She stepped back and gestured toward the ballroom. Your funeral. The documentation is loaded on USB drives for distribution. Security footage, complaint files, policy audits, everything you demanded.
This is enough rope to hang us all. Or enough truth to set us free. Marcus walked into the ballroom. 200 seats filled with reporters, cameras pointing toward the podium like weapons. The noise level dropped as he entered, conversations dying mid-sentence. Every eye tracked him across the carpet, the billionaire CEO in a hoodie and jeans, looking more like someone who'd wandered in from the street than the man who'd built a $4.7 billion empire. He took the podium without notes, without teleprompters, without the safety net of prepared remarks. Just a microphone and a room full of people waiting to watch him bleed. The cameras went live. Red lights glowed. Marcus gripped the podium and began. My name is Marcus Bennett. I'm the founder and CEO of Liberty Airways. Last night, I was racially profiled and nearly removed from my own airplane by my own employees. This morning, I'm here to tell you that what happened to me has been happening to passengers for years, and I take full responsibility for allowing it to continue. Camera flashes exploded like artillery. Reporters leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Marcus continued without pause. Captain Thomas Hargrove, who attempted to remove me from first class, has 19 formal complaints in his personnel file. 19 times over 7 years, passengers filed discrimination complaints. 19 times, our HR department investigated and found insufficient evidence to take action. 19 times, we protected the employee instead of the passenger. He gestured toward Sarah, who began distributing USB drives to reporters. You're receiving complete documentation of every complaint filed against Captain Hargrove, along with security footage from last night's incident. You'll also receive our internal audit showing systemic failures and how we handle bias complaints across the organization. A reporter from CNN stood. Mr. Bennett, releasing this documentation exposes Liberty Airways to massive legal liability. Why are you doing this? Because hiding it would be worse. Because passengers deserve truth. Because I'd rather lose money than lose integrity. Fox Business reporter next. Your stock is down 14% in pre-market trading, Analysts predict it could fall below $60 when markets open. Do you accept responsibility for destroying shareholder value? I accept responsibility for building a company that allowed discrimination to flourish. The stock price is a consequence of that failure. If investors want to abandon Liberty Airways because we're choosing accountability over cover-ups, that's their right. MSNBC followed up. Senator Montgomery claims his son was provoked. What's your response? Preston Montgomery assaulted me on camera. He grabbed my shoulder and demanded I be removed because he assumed I didn't belong in first class. There was no provocation beyond my refusal to surrender a seat I'd paid for. Mr. Montgomery is banned from Liberty Airways, and I've encouraged federal prosecutors to pursue assault charges. The questions accelerated, reporters shouting over each other. Marcus pointed to a woman from the Associated Press. What happens to Captain Hargrove? He's suspended pending investigation. If the evidence supports termination, he'll be fired, regardless of union protection. Civil rights violations aren't subject to arbitration. Bloomberg reporter. You're facing potential strikes from the pilots' union. How do you respond? I respond by saying that protecting racists is the wrong hill to die on. If the union wants to strike in defense of discrimination, they'll discover that principle matters more than convenience. The New York Times. You've announced a $50 million compensation fund for affected passengers. How many people do you expect to file claims? I have no idea, but every person who experienced what I experienced last night deserves compensation and an apology. We're creating an independent claims process with third-party oversight to ensure fairness. The questions continued for 90 minutes. Marcus answered every one without evasion, without corporate doublespeak, without the careful language lawyers use to avoid liability. When reporters asked about financial impact, he acknowledged it would be devastating. When they pressed about job losses, he admitted layoffs were possible. When they demanded to know if Liberty Airways would survive, he answered honestly, I don't know if we'll survive, but if we go down, we'll go down standing for something that matters. And if we survive, we'll be better for having faced this honestly. The press conference ended at 10:43 a.m. Marcus stepped away from the podium while reporters mobbed Sarah for copies of the documentation. His phone vibrated with notifications he didn't check. Outside the ballroom, James Walker waited with the expression of a man watching a train wreck in slow motion. The board has called an emergency session. They want you out. They're talking about voting to remove you as CEO. Marcus walked past him toward the elevator. They can try. I control 71% of voting shares. Good luck with the math. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of himself in the polished brass. Tired eyes, lines deepened by stress, gray hair catching fluorescent light. But underneath the exhaustion, something else. Relief. The burden of secrets lifted, replaced by the clean ache of truth spoken aloud. The doors opened onto chaos. The lobby swarmed with cameras and reporters who'd missed the official press conference. They surged forward, shouting questions Marcus didn't answer. He pushed through the crowd and emerged onto 6th Avenue, where morning sun cut between buildings like blades. His phone buzzed. Market update notification. Liberty Airways stock had opened at $61.20, down $17.80 from yesterday's close, down 22%. The circuit breaker had triggered within the first minute of trading, halting transactions for 15 minutes while the market absorbed the shock. $2.4 billion of market capitalization evaporated while Marcus walked 3 blocks to the subway entrance. He descended into the underground, Metro card in hand,
Just another commuter in a hoodie disappearing into the city's digestive system. Above ground, the financial world was tearing itself apart, analyzing his press conference. Below ground, Marcus Bennett rode the Q train toward Brooklyn, surrounded by strangers who had no idea they were sitting next to a man who just bet his empire on the radical notion that people deserved dignity more than they deserved profit.